I'd be a little worried. All right, we're going to jump into our new set of learning today. Last time I asked you to respond to this, so for today we're going to keep moving. Now, when these men went west to seek their fortune, I've got a little bit of a lag, I'm going to let it catch up. When these men went west to seek their fortune and got rich quick, they also got rid of their money very quickly. So this is a quote from Louise Clapp again. We've heard from her a couple of times. She was the one who saw those men find all that gold at Rich Bar. So this is what she had to say about it. Those who worked in those mines during the fall of 1850 were extremely fortunate, or lucky. But alas, the Monte fiend ruined hundreds. Should I tell you the fate of the most successful of these gold hunters? From poor men, they found themselves at the end of a few weeks absolutely rich. So they went from poor to rich very quickly. Elated with their good fortune, seized with mania for Monte, the card game in this video, in less than a year, these unfortunates, so lately respectable and intelligent, became a pair of drunken gamblers. So when they made their fortune, rather than buying a ticket back east and using that money to create a home for themselves back east, or even to create a home for themselves here, they spent that money very quickly. One of them, at this present writing, works for $5 a day and boards himself out of that. The other actually suffers for the necessaries of life, a too common result of the scenes in the mines. So they became rich very, very quickly. They spent their money very, very quickly on this game called Monte. And then they were poor again. So later, if you want to, you can go to the self-paced video. He'll teach you how to play Monte. It's a gambling card game that's basically picking which card you think it's going to be. So if the miners were so quickly running out of money, who's making all this money? The gold came out of the ground. The money has to end up somewhere. I've got a little bit of a lag again, so I'm going to give it just a pause here. Take a look at this slide. See if you recognize any names on here. Des Moines is home to a large portion of Wells Fargo workers and businesses that are related to that banking company. And Henry Wells and William Fargo actually were originally getting their start during the 1849 gold rush. They went to open an office in San Francisco once that popularity began to grow, and they became one of America's premier banking institutions. Nowadays, you probably haven't seen a lot of Studebakers. It's a type of car. But John Studebaker was one of the gold rush miners. He was making wheelbarrows for gold rush miners before he made his car. And then Philip Armour, who later will found a meatpacking empire in Chicago, made a fortune operating the sluices that controlled the flow of water into the rivers being mined. But I think the people that made the most money were the storekeepers. So if you want to click on this link as well, or if you just want to watch on my screen, it's up to you. Take a look at these store prices. Now, there's a little bit of math involved here. I know I didn't promise you any math in the morning, but we'll make it through together. Again, I'm just going to wait a moment for the stream to catch up with me. Okay, gold rush prices. Many arrived in California hoping to strike it rich, but they quickly learned it was hard work to find gold. Most miners only found $10 to $15 worth of gold dust a day. Merchants quickly realized they could get rich by selling supplies at high prices to the miners. Sam Brannan, a merchant who built a store next to Sutter's Fort, so Sutter's Fort is where they discovered gold the first time, made more than $2,000 a day selling goods to the miners. Supplies were scarce in California, and the demand for them was so great that merchants raised prices as high as they wanted. The gold pans that miners needed cost 20 cents before 1849, but soon were sold for $8 each. So think about what a huge difference that is. When the demand was low, when not very many people wanted it, they sold gold pans for only 20 cents. When the demand was high and lots of people wanted it, they sold gold pans for $8. Think about how many times 20 cents goes into $8. The cost of eggs went from $1 to $2 to $3 per egg. You can go to the grocery store today and you can get a dozen eggs for under $2. But they were selling eggs for $1, $2, $3 each because it was so hard to get those supplies from east to west, and they could charge whatever they wanted. The miners couldn't go to Walmart and get a cheaper deal. They had to buy from whoever was selling. So here are what the item would cost in 1851 and 2007. If you want to go through this process and see how much it would be today, you are certainly welcome to, but this still gives us a pretty good idea. Imagine going to the grocery store to make hamburgers, and you needed to pay $279 per pound of hamburger meat. Those are some pretty expensive hamburgers. Cheese, it's going to cost you $700 a pound. Now, coffee and crackers, those seem pretty cheap still. But flour, if you wanted to make bread, you're going to be paying $363 per bag for your flour. So you're noticing that these merchants had a lot of control over the prices they could set. I'm going to wait just a moment again for the stream to catch up with me so I don't click to the next slide before you guys all are ready. Now, you also may have heard of this company, Levi's Blue Jeans. Nowadays, almost everyone owns blue jeans. I mean, some of you like to live in your sweatpants or your leggings, but usually most of us own a pair of blue jeans. And blue jeans were actually invented by Levi Strauss during this time period. In 1873, a man named Levi Strauss wanted to sell sturdy pants to miners. Strauss made his pants out of the strongest fabric he could buy, which was cotton denim. He reinforced the pockets with copper rivets so that they could hold heavy tools without ripping. For more than 125 years, jeans have remained popular. Levi Strauss's pants have proved to be durable in more ways than one. So that's the history of your blue jeans. Although, during this time period, they couldn't just throw their blue jeans in the wash, so people used to joke that a miner's pants could stand up all on their own, because they were so caked with mud and dirt that if they were to take those pants off, they'd just stay standing up straight. If you were in California during the gold rush, what would you sell or invent to make money off of the prospectors or the people looking for gold? How could you make some money, do you think? And we'll wait here a while because, again, we're about 40 seconds in lag time today. If you were in California during the gold rush, what would you sell or invent to make money off of the prospectors or the people looking for gold? I wonder if as a teacher I could offer lessons to teach people how to read or do math so that they couldn't be taken advantage of by these people that are selling things, these inventors. I'm going to share out what some of you are responding. Yeah, thinking back, do you remember when Luzena Wilson, she met a guy who wanted one biscuit for $150 because it had been so long since he had had a baked good? Gambling was very successful for many people living out in the gold mining towns because, like we discussed, those men thought they were invincible. They thought, I'll flip over a rock tomorrow and I'll get rich again. And you have to think about it. If these people were willing to travel all the way to California hoping that they'd be lucky, they might be the type of people that think gambling will make them even more money. And the biggest thing was items that would go bad. So think about like milk. Are you going to be able to get milk from Massachusetts all the way to San Francisco without it spoiling? Probably not. What about butter? Maybe, but you'll have to keep it cold all the way. So part of it was the merchants themselves had to pay a lot of money to move those goods from even Missouri all the way to San Francisco. Good morning, Susie. We'll keep moving on in just a moment here. All right, I feel like everyone's had a chance sort of to share their thinking. One of the big things that changed as a result of the gold rush was the American dream, which seems like to me kind of a big thing to change about Americans, changing the way we think about what it is to be successful. So during the time period that came before this, the people that originally came to America, they believed in hard work. That came from that group of people that we called the Puritans when we talked about the colonies. It was this idea that things aren't valuable if you didn't have to work hard for them. And then Thomas Paine said that again during the American Revolution. He talked about the summer soldiers, the sunshine patriots. He was saying that anything that is worth fighting for is more valuable in the end. The harder you have to work for something, the more it means to you. So before the gold rush, a big part of the American identity was valuing hard work, of farming like Thomas Jefferson wanted, farming and working hard to earn what you got. This is not so much true with the gold rush. In fact, it was sort of the opposite. So look here. The old American dream, the dream inherited from 10 generations of ancestors, was the dream of the Puritans, of Benjamin Franklin's Poor Richard, of Thomas Jefferson's yeoman farmers, of men and women content to accumulate their modest fortunes a little at a time, year by year by year. A new dream was the dream of instant wealth, won in a twinkling by audacity and good luck. And for better or for worse, its meaning was that El Dorado, not some Puritan city on a hill, was the proper abode of American people. What he's saying here is Americans used to view hard work being the model of a good person. And now they're starting to shift and say, it's okay to get rich quick. It's okay to have your goal to be very lucky and to be rich not due to anything that you did, but being in the right place at the right time. So I'm curious, do you think that Americans today care if you are rich because of hard work or rich because of good luck? What you'll need to do on this slide is drag the icon one direction or another. You'll drag it one way or another to show what you're thinking. Again, we'll have to pause just a minute so that my slides and my stream can catch up all together. I apologize for that. For some reason, it works better in the afternoon. Maybe my internet is more sleepy in the morning. So put your dot where you think. Does it matter if you worked hard to get rich, or does it not matter if you worked hard to get rich, in your opinion? From what you've seen from Americans today. Think about different generations too. Maybe people who are older think one thing and people who are younger think a different thing. kind of put your dot where you agree, or just not what you think personally, but what you see around you. Do you think that Americans today really care if you are rich because of hard work or rich because of good luck? Interesting. I'm going to let you see what you guys are thinking. You're sort of right in the, like, at one side or the other. There's not a lot of people that are kind of in the middle, which is interesting to me because I think I sort of see both. I think I see both perspectives in American culture. That sometimes we're very respectful of hard work, but also we don't blame you if you got rich quick. Now, so far, we've been talking a lot about European descendant Americans, okay? So these are people that are living on the East Coast where America, the country, exists, and they've been traveling west to the new lands that America just won in the Mexican-American War. But as we established before, they weren't the only people there. In fact, they weren't the only people traveling to get there. Miners were coming from all around the world. About 2/3 of the 49ers were Americans. Most of these were white men, many from New England. So New England would be that kind of northern set of colonies where they had the factory system, not so much the southern set of colonies where they had agricultural systems. However, Native Americans, free blacks, and enslaved African Americans also worked the mines. Thousands of experienced miners came from Sonora in Mexico. Sonora is a state in Mexico. Other foreign miners came from Europe, South America, Australia, and China, because they just had to sail very quickly over the Pacific Ocean. If they came from China, if they came from Australia, right? They just had to sail very quickly over the Pacific Ocean. They didn't have to go all the way around. Most of the Chinese miners had been peasant farmers who fled from a region that suffered several crop failures. By the end of 1851, 1 of every 10 immigrants was Chinese. Used to the back-breaking labor in their homeland, the Chinese proved to be very patient miners. They would take over sites that American miners had abandoned because the easy gold was gone. Through steady, hard work, the Chinese made these played-out sites yield profits. So someone would give up, I'm not finding gold super easily anymore, I'm going to move on, I'm going to leave this claim behind. And then a person from China would come, and they would just put in the hours of work necessary to get what little gold was still there. American miners resented means, that's a tough one to define. Resented means they are upset with those people. So if I'm playing Monopoly and my little brother is having better luck than me, I resent him. I'm upset that he is having success when I'm not. It's making me angry. American miners resented the success of the Chinese and were suspicious of their different foods, dress, and customs. As the numbers of Chinese miners grew, American anger toward them also increased. Here we have a political cartoon. It says, "The only one barred out. Enlightened American statesmen, we must draw the line somewhere, you know." So they're saying the Golden Gate of Liberty is closed to this man from China. So they'll let communists in, nihilists, socialists, Fenians, and hoodlums, but no admittance to Chinamen. Now, these words all come from that time period of groups of people that American society frowned upon. In fact, Fenian is going to be people from Ireland, a specific group of people from Ireland. Hoodlums would be people that were violent or had committed crimes. And then these are all different non-communist or non-capitalist perspectives on the economy. So they're saying you're letting all these other people in that you disapprove of, but you're going to close the doors to Chinamen. And here's how they close the doors. Again, I'm going to wait just a moment so my slide catches up with you. Looks like the gap is slowly getting smaller. The way that they are going to try to get rid of these foreign miners is by creating a foreign miners license. A mixture of greed, anger, and prejudice caused some miners to cheat others. For example, I.B. Gilman promised to free an enslaved African American named Tom if he saved enough gold. For more than a year, Tom mined for himself after each day's work was done. When he finally had $1,000, Gilman gave him a paper saying he was free. The next day, however, the paper suspiciously disappeared. Even though Tom was certain he'd been robbed, he couldn't prove it. He had to work for another year before Gilman would free him. So there was definitely people taking advantage of other people, and in this case, taking advantage of slavery. Once the easy-to-find gold was gone, American miners began to force Native Americans and foreigners, such as Mexicans and the Chinese, out of the gold fields to reduce competition. Now, a lot of students, when I was asking, would you go to another planet to mine gold there, they said, no, because what if I got there too late and all the gold was gone? Well, that's starting to happen now. So the easy gold has mostly disappeared, and now American miners are starting to take advantage of the fact that America has recently bought or won California, and they want to reduce their competition. They want to get rid of the other groups of people that are there. After California became a state in 1850, this goes up even higher. One of the first acts of the California state legislature was to pass the foreign miners tax, which imposed a tax of $20 a month on miners from other countries. That was more than most could even afford to pay because they haven't found any gold yet, necessarily. As the tax collectors arrived in the camps, most foreigners left. And then we're seeing these advertisements, which are, racist. This was choosing to see another group of people that are different than yourselves and seeing those differences negatively and wanting those people to leave out of competition and hatefulness. Here is an example of that foreign miners license that they had to pay. This one is much cheaper, $4 a month. There's a couple of more political cartoons on this slide. Again, from that time period, just showing how the people from China were being treated. I do want to share with you this video. Whoop, I've gone too far. I do want to share with you this video from 1897. I just think it's so interesting to get a peek into that time period. 1897. Wow. They had a video. It's actually of a man being arrested, a Chinese man being arrested. We don't know why exactly. We don't know if it's right or wrong. But it's just sort of interesting to get an idea of what San Francisco looked like at that time.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Okay, so take a look at this. The two policemen have this man by the arms. There's other people walking on the streets. Do you see a lot of women? I see one person in skirts right here. But mostly these people are male. This man appears to be wearing an apron of some sort. Now they're on their horse-drawn cart that says police department on the side. Pretty different than the cop cars we're used to, isn't it? And you can see that there are true buildings, two-story buildings being built in this on the back there.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.org.
I want you to think critically about the way people were thinking about Chinese immigrants, the way people were treating Chinese immigrants in the 1850s. And I want you to think about how people think about and treat Mexican immigrants today. Do you see things that are different or things that are the same about those two? Again, I'm going to have to wait just a moment so everyone can get back on this slide. What do you think? Do you think there are similarities or differences in the way that some Americans feel about Mexican immigrants today and how some Americans felt about Chinese immigrants back then? I'm thinking about when people say they're taking our jobs. Is that the same to how they were feeling about the Chinese immigrants? Were the gold miners feeling like these people who were different than them were taking their financial opportunity and they wanted them to leave? I'm giving you a little more time to think about this one because this is kind of a bigger picture question and it's tying to our thinking today. I think both of these students were thoughtful, right? And so treating them similarly because they'd work harder and make money, but if the Americans maybe weren't working as hard, because that was what happening with the gold miners, right? They would leave the plots when they thought there was nothing left, but these Chinese immigrants were willing to put in that extra work. When I was growing up in Southern California, we would see that when it was time for the strawberry fields to be picked, most often you would see a lot of people of Mexican descent there, or Mexican immigrants, because most high school students didn't want to bend over in the hot sun for hours every day picking the strawberries, whereas these immigrants were willing to do so. Yeah, and this other student is saying the same thing, that this feeling of we don't want these people here because they're hard workers and they're different than us. All right. Now, an interesting side effect of pushing these Chinese immigrants out of the mines was the creation of a lot of the San Francisco economy. The Chinese opened shops, restaurants, and laundries. So many Chinese-owned businesses in San Francisco that their neighborhood was called Chinatown, and it still has that name today. You can thank the 1849 gold rush for your Hy-Vee Chinese food. That was really when this American idea of Chinese cuisine was created. And that's why Chinese food is very popular today in America. And today you can still go see Chinatown in San Francisco. Another impact of the gold rush. Now, remember, this was a very short period of time. By 1852, the gold rush was over. It started in 1849, ended in 1852. That's a 3-year gap. Over. While it lasted, about 250,000 people flooded into California. This huge migration caused economic growth that changed California permanently. The port city of San Francisco grew to become a center of banking, manufacturing, shipping, and trade. Its population exploded from around 400 in 1845 to 35,000 in 1850. That is such an incredibly quick growth, especially considering they couldn't fly there. They either had to walk across or sail around to make this population explode the way that it did. Now, this huge influx of people is going to have some negative consequences for the people that were already living there. Remember those Californios we talked about earlier on? These were people that had settled California when it still belonged to Mexico or Spain. The newcomers did not respect Californios, their customs, or their legal rights. In many cases, Americans seized their property, so they just took it. For example, Mariano Vallejo, the guy that we read his quote from, who said, my great ancestors settled this land when George Washington was fighting the British. So he's lived on this land as long as America's been a country. He lost almost all of it. Even so, that Spanish heritage has become a very important part of Californian culture. If you ever get a chance to visit, the food that's eaten, a lot of the music. There's in different towns, the way they celebrate things are all greatly influenced by that Spanish heritage. Native Americans, however, are the group of people that probably suffered the most. Similar to the East Coast, with the new diseases that were brought that they weren't immune to, they were killed by the thousands. Miners also hunted down and killed thousands more. It was because of this belief, maybe even the belief that came with Manifest Destiny, that Native Americans stood in the way of their progress. By 1870, California's Native American population had fallen from 150,000 to only about 58,000. So in that time, from 1849 to 1870, it's about 20 years, they've lost 2/3 of their population, just about. And part of this was legal. In fact, in 1850, one of the first acts, after the Act against Foreign Miners, this was another act that they passed. It was called the Act for the Government and Protection of Indians. And I say that very sarcastically, this protection piece. The Justice of the Peace would have jurisdiction over all complaints between Indians and whites. But in no case shall a white man be convicted of any offense upon the testimony of an Indian or Indians. So essentially, you guys can come to court, but if a Native American person is saying that white man stole something from me, the court is not going to listen to that testimony. That's not good enough. Whites would be able to obtain control of Indian children. This section would eventually be used to justify and provide for Indian slavery. It would be illegal to sell or administer alcohol to Indians. If any Indian was convicted of a crime, any white person could come up before the court and contract for that Indian's services, making them an indentured servant, and in return would pay the Indian's fine. If an Indian was found walking too slow, loitering where alcohol was sold, begging, or leading a sinful course of life, they could be arrested. The justice, mayor, or recorder could make out the warrant, and within 24 hours, the services of the Indian in question could be sold to the highest bidder. So we're talking about a new existence of slavery now on the West Coast. Sometimes Americans think slavery only took place in the South and it only happened to African Americans. Here in California, there was a legal institution of slavery of the Native Americans. Now, they might have called it indentured servitude, but it essentially meant that they bought the services of this person, and this person had to work to be freed, if they were ever freed. This reiterates essentially what we were talking about before, but it focuses not only on the disease, but also on almost a genocide. This idea of killing them because they were getting in the way of progress. Whites are becoming impressed with the belief that it will be absolutely necessary to exterminate the savages before they can labor much longer in the mines with security. By demonstrating that the state would not punish Indian killers, but instead reward them, militia expeditions helped inspire vigilantes to kill at least 6,460 California Indians between 1846 and 1873. The U.S. Army also joined in the killing, Madley notes, killing at least 1,600 native Californians. We talked on the Oregon Trail Escape Room, too, about these Indian assimilation schools, this idea that the children were forced to go to these schools to act less like Native Americans and act more like white Americans. What have we learned about in this whole set of slides? And we are coming to a close here pretty soon. That maybe used to be taught with fake history. Do you think that we've always taught the gold rush this way, or do you think we used to falsify or fake some of this information because of whitewashing, heroification, or feel-good history? If you don't exactly remember what those are, I have included some definitions there for you. What have we learned that could be used, or that maybe used to be taught, with fake history? Do you think we used to whitewash some things and tell history from only the European perspective? Do you think maybe we used to view one person or group as being perfect? Do you think we ignored things that made us feel uncomfortable? So when I was a 5th grader learning about the gold rush in Southern California, Do you think they talked to me about how many Native Americans died and how they died? Do you think they showed me the political cartoons of how people were treating Chinese people? I think I agree. I think there would be a lot of feel-good history. I don't really know who you would heroify with this. There's not a group of people that you would really say they were perfect and they did everything right. But I definitely think we wanted to cover up and just focus on how the gold rush was interesting and they invented blue jeans and San Francisco happened, and ignore the other groups of people that maybe suffered. That would be the whitewashed piece as well. So to wrap things up, settlers are now begin farming this new land that they had taken. Sacramento and actually the Central Valley of California is still a huge agricultural resource for America. If you want to eat an almond, you're probably eating an almond from California. Sacramento became the center of a productive farming region. And the big thing with the gold rush is that by a very short amount of time, by the end of 1849, they already had enough people to apply for statehood. So they got to skip being a territory altogether. They just applied to Congress and became a state in 1850. And here's what I want you to notice. They became a free state. Now, during this time period, this is how many states exist. So 1846, Iowa, we finally made the cut. California, only 4 years later, despite the fact that they had been Mexican territory up until 1848. It took us much longer as a state to become a state because we didn't have that huge influx of population like California did. Here's the free state piece. At the national level, California's statehood created turmoil. Before 1850, there was an equal number of free states and slave states. Southerners were very worried that because the statehood of California made free states outnumber the slave states, Northerners would call it to a vote and make slavery illegal everywhere. We're going to be talking more about the Civil War in May, so we're not going to get into all of this right now. I just want you to notice that at this time in history, before 1850, there is a balance of states that are free and states that have slaves. Now California wants to be a free state, which is a little ironic considering what they were up to with the Native Americans, and that's going to disrupt that balance. So there's the connection, really, between the gold rush and the Civil War. Instead of having you guys answer this question, I'm just going to move along and kind of explain the choice menu quickly, and then I'll have one more question for you at the end. I don't want to take up too much of your time. This choice menu is on these slides, and it's also on the PowerSchool class page. So if you click on the choice menu, it's going to show you some options. And this is really what we're going to be doing the rest of the week. Tomorrow, Mr. Halstead will have an awesome video for you about primary sources. And then we're going to be spending the following 2 days. And also I'd like you to do one activity on Wednesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, you'll pick an activity to do each of those days. You can choose any activity you are interested in. We would like one of your 3 activities to be from this fake history column. And quickly, I'm just going to read through your options here. Imagine you are a 49er and read a letter back home to someone in Warren County about your experience. Include one illustration of you panning or mining for gold. Make it as accurate as possible using research online. Find 2 primary sources from this period of history. Copy the pictures into a document and write a 4 to 6 sentence summary of each one explaining what it shows about this time period. The primary sources video tomorrow with Mr. Halstead might help you with this one. The museum has lost a primary source. Create a primary source that could have been from the gold rush and could be displayed in the museum. It could even be 3D. Create a persuasive advertisement to entice people to come west and pan for gold. Include color and illustrations if you create it by hand, time period pictures if you create it on the computer. Create a how-to manual for panning for gold. Include illustrations. Make it as accurate as possible, including research online. Create a fact or fiction poster. Create 9 statements, some true, some false, about the gold rush. Put them on slides. After each one, have a slide that explains why it is true or false. Create an acrostic poem using the phrase California Gold Rush. So an acrostic poem is when you write all the letters down and then you write a little sentence next to each letter. Or just a word even. You can always look up an acrostic poem to see an example of one. And then you'll use information from the internet to help you out with that. Create a list of 10 to 12 appropriate vocabulary or slang words associated to this period of history. Give an image for each one. Create a store with the layout and the list of things you would have for sale. And then here for fake history, remember when we made those PSAs for our action plans for Delve? It could be a video or a social media post to inform people about a group of people that were discriminated against in the gold rush. Create a presentation for someone in your family that will teach them about fake history in the gold rush. Write 3 paragraphs about fake history in the gold rush. So the way you're going to turn these in is on PowerSchool class page. You'll go to the activities assignments, and then you can turn in as many different documents as you need. So the last question that I have for you is just sort of asking, again, your thinking on today's activities. So once you have finished and you've kind of caught up with me going through the choice menu, leave your responses right here. This video is on my YouTube channel, and you can go watch it again if you need to. I hope you all are having a fantastic day, a fantastic time with family members or people you're living with at home, and I hope you're staying safe, and I hope that this helped you be, I don't know, maybe a little less bored. Thanks for joining in today. I miss you all lots, and I can't wait to work with you again in the classroom.